On New Year's Day 1972, a formidable Manchester United side, including legendary stars such as Dennis Law, Georgie Best and Bobby Charlton, arrived in East London, having lost just 2 of their last 23 fixtures. Despite the depth of talent facing them, West Ham, inspired by an emerging midfield force of Billy Bonds and Trevor Brooking, taught the Red Devils a footballing lesson in front of a 42,000 crowd at the Bowling Ground, sending the Reds back up the M1 on the wrong end of a 3-0 stuffing. Second half goals from Clyde Best and Jeff Hurst via the penalty spot secured the points for Ron Greenwood's side. But it was Brian Pop Robson's audacious backheel which opened the scoring 5 minutes ahead of half-time, for which this game is most fondly remembered.
Hurst now finding Redknapp. Redknapp across that goal. No, can someone poke that? Robson, yes! Brian Robson has done it. He squirmed that through. A lot of credit to Harry Redknapp, though.
There can't be too many professional outfield players who fail to score a single goal in their entire career. Yet Steve Potts, West Ham's Connecticut-born central defender, who had been with the club since the early 1980s, was on his way to becoming one of the few before he finally broke his duck after 5 years in the first team. Hull City were the opponents on a chilly October afternoon in 1990, and the Tigers went into the game in good form, having been unbeaten in their previous 7 fixtures. However, they were swept aside by Billy Bond's rampant West Ham, who ran out 7-1 winners on the day, the second of which was a speculative Potts punt that was hopelessly fumbled by Hull's goalkeeper. The 5-foot 7-inch tall defender, who went on to make 399 first-team appearances for West Ham, never scored again.
Potts lines up the shot. Oh dear! What an awful mistake by the Hull City goalkeeper, and Steve Potts of all people has scored.
It had been another torrid season spent at the wrong end of the table for West Ham, but when Chelsea visited the Bowling Ground on the 2nd of May 1988, John Lyall's side knew that a win would be enough to guarantee Division 1 survival. Our West London rivals were in free fall, having won just one of their last 25 games, and went into the match 1 place below West Ham in 17th. Not so much a 6-pointer as a season decider. Hammers fans need not have worried, however, as a brace from Leroy Rossignol and goals from Paul Hilton and Tony Cottee earned the Irons a comfortable 4-1 win. While 2-goal hero Rossignol also earned the first red card of his career, having been dismissed for strangling Blues defender and former West Ham assistant manager Steve Clarke following an altercation.
And it's a red card.
West Ham therefore retained their Division 1 status, while Chelsea went on to draw their final game of the season and lose the ensuing playoff against Middlesbrough, a defeat that saw the Blues relegated from the top flight. As the 1996-97 season entered February, the Irons were in deep trouble at the wrong end of the FA Carling Premiership. Harry Redknapp realised that without the necessary firepower, his team were destined for the drop, and so he made an impassioned plea to West Ham's board to release necessary funds. Chairman Terry Brown and his fellow directors agreed and provided the manager with a healthy £6 million. This war chest allowed Redknapp to bring in 2 strikers, John Hartson from Arsenal and Paul Kitson from Newcastle. Despite failing to score on their joint debut, a 1-0 defeat at Derby, Hartson and Kitson both netted in the next match, an incredible 4-3 win over Tottenham played in gale force conditions. Between them, the pair went on to hit a combined 13 goals from 25 appearances and save the club from relegation. 12 years after Stuart Slater's stunning effort against Sunderland, a goal in which the ball stayed airborne from the moment it left Phil Park's boot to hitting the back of the Sunderland net, Trevor Sinclair performed a similar feat in a 2001 Boxing Day clash against Derby. With Glenn Roeder's West Ham already 2 goals to the good through efforts from Sebastian Schemmel and Paolo Di Canio, and by now bristling with confidence, Di Canio lifted a corner towards Joe Cole on the cusp of County's penalty box. Cole brought the ball under control before firing a deft chip towards the back post. Sinclair, on the back foot, adjusted his feet before firing an unstoppable scissor kick into Mark Poom's far corner to make it 3-0. A teenage Jermaine Defoe's 90th minute goal made the final score 4-0 to West Ham. A cracking Christmas treat for all watching Hammers. On a chilly November day in 1970, West Ham were entertaining Wolves in a Division 1 fixture. Midway through the second half, a Bobby Moore headed clearance, described elsewhere as thunderous, caught Welsh referee Gerard Lewis squarely on the side of the noggin, knocking the unfortunate official out cold. As the game continued around him, Moore noticed that Lewis was struggling to respond and immediately ran to the referee before calmly picking up his whistle and blowing it to bring the game to a halt, allowing medical assistance from both clubs to attend to the stricken Lewis. Having deployed the smelling salts, Moore checked with Lewis to see how he was before handing the official's whistle back to him, upon which the game continued. The two sides went on to play out an entertaining 3-3 draw. Referee Lewis, whose unfortunate incident was chuckled at by millions on Match of the Day that night, continued to officiate at the highest level for many years after. However, it was for the Moore incident that he remained mostly remembered. West Ham fans are a fairly forgiving bunch. Only twice before in recent history had their collective dissatisfaction with the club's board led to notable public displays of unrest. Firstly, during the ill-fated bond scheme in the early 1990s, and in the latter years of Terry Brown's reign as chairman, a decade or so later. The 2016 move to Stratford had, however, stirred something within the fan base, and when the promised increased investment in the playing squad failed to materialise, a boardroom decision that resulted in the club being involved in a relegation scrap, the fans decided enough was enough. Although the board had successfully managed to see off a threatened march, the pent-up anger and frustration remained, and it all boiled over during this 3-0 home defeat against Burnley. Shortly after the visitors had scored their third goal, hundreds of fans rushed to demonstrate underneath the director's box, while one supporter emulated the bond scheme protests from 1992 by picking up the corner flag and planting it in the centre circle. It was a potent reminder to the club's owners that the fan base still wouldn't be taken for fools. Not for the last time in this list, we turn our attention to international matters. An under-pressure England, fresh from a surprise 2-1 defeat in Switzerland, travelled to Hungary for a World Cup qualifier in a tight group also involving Romania and Minnows Norway, who England were famously humbled by in their next outing. However, on this occasion, the Three Lions secured a 3-1 victory, a win best remembered for this remarkable second-half strike by West Ham's Trevor Brooking. The midfielder had given England an encouraging lead after 16 minutes, when he finished from a similar position to his goal in the FA Cup final against Arsenal a year earlier. But Ron Greenwood's side were pegged back just before the break. On the hour mark, a slick move on the left flank saw the ball find Brooking, poised just outside the penalty box. The Hammers midfielder struck the ball instantly, firing into the top left stanchion where the ball remained for all to see.
Terrific goal! A terrific goal by Brooking, and England are back in the lead. Look at the ball caught up in the corner there.
It remains an iconic moment, a wonderful example of the almost telepathic communication Brooking shared with Kevin Keegan, and also his most famous international goal. When West Ham faced Wolves at the Bowling Ground on the 6th of March 1993, it was little more than a week since West Ham's favourite son had passed away from cancer at the age of just 51. The previous weekend had seen a minute's silence observed across the country, and nowhere more impeccably so than at Roker Park, where West Ham played out a half-hearted 0-0 draw with Sunderland. But it was the following weekend that gave the club and its supporters the first chance to join together in grief at Moore's passing in Upton Park, where he spent his best years as a player. Both Green Street and the Bowling Ground itself were awash with wreaths, memorials, replica kits, and all sorts of other items of memorabilia depicting the great man, left by football fans from around the world. It truly was a sight to behold. The match itself was preceded by Moore's fellow World Cup winning hammers Martin Peters and Geoff Hurst laying a huge wreath depicting Bobby's famous number 6 on the centre circle. Goals from Trevor Morley, who wore a number 12 shirt on the day instead of 6, Julian Dix and Matty Holmes secured a fitting result to mark the great man's departure. Hammers fans were given a late Christmas present in 1989 when Lou Macari, whose own short tenure as manager was to end prematurely just 6 weeks later, signed Trevor Morley and Ian Bishop from Manchester City in exchange for Mark Ward. Both proved to be worthwhile investments in the ensuing years, although an incident in March 1991 saw the duo make the back pages for all the wrong reasons. West Ham announced that Morley had been bizarrely stabbed by his wife in a domestic incident. Almost immediately, rumours surfaced suggesting Mrs. Morley had knifed her husband, having found him in a compromising position with teammate Bishop. Although both players immediately denied the rumours, this urban myth continues to be repeated to this day. Morley, who readily admits that the idle gossip killed me for a while, believes his estranged wife was responsible for the rumours surfacing, having discovered that he was playing away from home with a member of the opposite sex.
Well, at the start, if I was gay, I wouldn't choose him, to tell you the truth.